Hello, and welcome to Conscious Woman Rising the Conversations podcast. I'm Dipika Delmenico, host of the Conversations, and today I'm deeply enthused for this conversation that we're about to have with Mike Gardiner, also known as Mike Mantic. And Mike is an agent of true creative purpose. He helps people find their soul's calling and then through intuitive processes, develop a path to live that calling every day, leading to a truly rewarding life. And that's what we all want, right? Mike's the creative impulse behind Synergism, whose mission is for helping you discover, create, and live your true nature and purpose. And that's it. And that is it. That's absolutely it. It's the ultimate creative experience. So welcome, Mike. Hello.
Thanks. Very happy to be here.
It's great to have you here. And it's really, I'm really excited to be in conversation with you today. I'd love to ask you what inspires you to get up each day and do what you do, supporting this pretty mighty mission of helping people to discover, or being in service, I should say, or I could say, being in service to help people to discover, create, and live their true nature and purpose.
Well, where else would you be, Dipika? Honestly.
On a busy roundabout with no way of knowing where to exit.
Yeah, it's I mean, I don't really think about it in terms of what makes me get up in the morning, just because I mean the alternative is being caught up in my egoic nonsense, where I sit around and go, oh, I'm not good enough to do this and I'm not good enough to do that, and oh no, how am I going to make the next dollar? And do you know what I mean? Like the identity is going to keep you focused on low level stuff all the time, and you're either subject to that, you're either essentially a victim to that, or we have the skills, the tools, the possibilities to choose, okay, well, what am I really here to do? And step into the sort of like creative influence that naturally comes when you just choose, no, I want to live according to my highest calling.
Yeah. But that's a really big, like, that's huge. And I'm sure there's so many people listening that when you say that low level of being caught in, what I'm earning or what I'm doing, or, so many things that we identify with. And I'm sure that there's many people that are listening to this conversation and consider themselves to be really high functioning, high achieving people. Yeah. But when you use the words low level, you're talking qualitatively, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. The way I look at it is that, and I'm rapt that you mentioned people who call themselves high functioning. I've worked with people who are doctors, who have got, multiple degrees, all of that sort of stuff. And so, in a way, the way I see it is that we have an identity, an essential identity that we develop over time. We develop through our childhood programming, all of that. Like there's reasonably common knowledge. What's not commonly known, though, is how that influences how we see ourselves, how it influences the decisions that we make. So, circling back to having worked with doctors and scientists and people like that, to discover in them that actually their pursuit of that career, for instance, may have been attributed to their childhood programming. There's a few different ways of personality typing, but the two common ones that I use, one's got 12 personality types, the other one's the Enneagram. And in both cases, what it does is those personality typing systems will show you the shadow. And that is, for instance, somebody who, for instance, is a high achiever, like you said, high functioning, high achiever, career minded, successful, all of that sort of stuff. But if that's being driven by a deep unconscious sense of themselves where they are not good enough, and so then that's their response to that is to work harder, to achieve more in order to compensate for this deep-seated feeling of feeling not good enough. And there's not a person on the planet that doesn't have this shadow side to their identity. And most of the way we operate in the world, and the way particularly our society operates in the world, is to feed that shadow, to spend our time compensating for all the ways we feel lacking. And when you do that, you are essentially at war with yourself, and you are essentially constantly in survival. Even if you're highly successful CEO, making 7 figures, whatever it is, if the driving force is that I'm in this job because I'm not good enough, and if I just get another house and a fifth sports car and something like that, then I'll be enough. You see what I mean? That then we start chasing this. If only I can have that, then I'll be enough. If only I can achieve that, then I'll be enough. And that to me is a route to becoming old and in pain before your time. And we see this thing so many times. If you look of the stories that people tell when they reach death, whether that be through old age or whether that be through illness or something like that, of I wish I'd spent more time with my loved ones. I wish I'd done that thing that I wanted to do as a child. You know what I mean? Like there you can see this enormous discrepancy between what is true for us in our hearts and what we create in the world because of the negative impact and the negative influence of our beliefs and our preoccupation with trying to fix ourselves.
Yeah. Well, it's a big industry, and a lot of people, cash in on it, and so what I love what you're sharing, and it's so we can sort of almost put together low level with unaware. Being unaware of what's really driving us, being unaware of what we're really plugging our vital forces, life forces into. And I also really appreciate that you said you work with tools that reveal or show different personality types which come with a shadow, as opposed to like it's the personality. We all have a personality, but it's not who we are. And so we can understand about ourselves and our come from, but not to get away with hanging our hat on thinking, oh, that's who I am.
Absolutely. Well, the really, to me, the real gifts that come out of this is that it's great the way this conversation's unfolded, because we now have we're developing this picture of this personality who's, in this particular instance, like they feel not good enough, and their response to that is to become a high achiever, to achieve all these amazing things or to strive for certain things. And hand in hand with that is this identity, this personality. So I'm rapt that you mentioned it, because it's no matter how good or bad we think we are, like everyone's got, inner voices and all of that sort of stuff. And no matter what picture that is, it's by its very nature of where it's come from, it is inauthentic. It is not who you truly are, and when you see healing modalities like primal therapy or rebirthing, or like I was trained as a deep tissue body worker and did breath work and things like that, and you have these moments where they're all very cathartic processes, which I don't really think is necessary anymore. It's almost like that was perfect for a particular point in time. But I just remember these experiences of just having these cathartic processes and just everything dropping away, the identity dropping away, or seeing that in people that I was working with. And for a moment, just glimpsing the raw truth of who they are, and all of it, like the goodness, the badness, the struggle, the aspiration, all of that. And it's just this magical moment of just seeing true authenticity in someone.
Stunning.
And essentially that's where we get to when we start working with choosing to operate from our highest perspective, is that we have these moments where the mask is off and we are just who we are, without trying to put on a front, without trying to impress anyone. It's just, okay, that's me.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely beautiful.
It is beautiful. How liberating is that? How peaceful is that? How loving and how present is that? But those masks have they have like suction cap sort of tentacles on them, and they just stick to your face, and it can be so hard to peel them off. But as you're speaking about this higher perspective, it is so whole that what is possibly broken that needs fixing then about the personality?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than to just embrace it.
Yeah. The funny thing is too that our society really, the narrative is that we have to be a certain way in order to be accepted. So we find all these ways to be on the premise that if I can be more like this, if I can be more cheerful, or I can be more whatever it is, then I will be loved and accepted. No one's trusting that if I'm just truly authentically me, I'll be accepted. And in my experience, two things happen when you can sit in being truly authentic. One is how you are in the world becomes a gift to everyone else, and it gives permission for them to do the same.
Yes.
And that's an amazing gift. And we all struggle with that every day. I'm not saying that I'm perfectly authentic every single day. Oh my God, no.
Well, that's it, and therein lays the humanity, doesn't it? Yeah.
That's what we've come down into.
Yes. Yeah. But there is something, it's really easeful to be in the company of people that are that authentic, because there's a real, without it being expressed, you can feel an invitation to just drop the mask, because it's not needed.
Yeah.
So I can just hang out and be. But I can be me. Oh, what does that feel like? I've had so many masks on for so long. But that thing about being a certain way, and that's acceptable, like that's not only societal and in our education institutes, like this begins in the home, in families. Like families have so many expectations, unless, bringing it back to what you were sharing about the low level functioning, you can, I can see how it just plays out and becomes a generational pattern.
Yeah, and wasn't it? It was either Freud or Jung who said that the two things that we have is standing in the way of our freedom is societal programming and family programming. And if we can move through that, then we are essentially free. It's it's one of those things too where it can be really easy, speaking about it like this, it can be really easy to get caught up in, okay, so now this is the next thing that I have to fix. Yeah, that's where the ego is going to go when people are listening. Okay, so now what's the solution? How do I fix this?
Yeah.
And right there, that's the ego trying to hijack it as well. And taking that as an understanding, just taking a moment to just go, what would it be like if I just accepted myself as complete, as whole right now, with nothing to fix? What would it be like? Would it be okay if I was just relaxed into who I am? Would it be okay if everything just worked out in my favor?
Yeah.
And just seeing what the answer is,
Yeah, exactly. Mike, I'd like to share with people listening a quote from you, which is, every person came to this life with a mission, a singular purpose and objective which your soul wants expressed in this life. Your job is to overcome the amnesia of birth and the misdirection of the ego, and to live every day oriented by this mission. I love that, the amnesia of birth and the overcoming of the ego. Can you just speak to that in terms of what we're speaking about with this hijacking voice, with this hijacking identity that says, no, come with me. You're actually not whole. You're actually not good enough. So just go and get another degree. And
there's things that we can do, like meditations and experiences that we can do where we go back to prior to birth, and look at reconnect with what our soul had a mission for. So it's interesting. Let me go one step further back than that and explore what is purpose. Because to me, through my explorations, every soul has the same purpose. Like in a pure form, every soul has the same purpose, which is essentially just develop, grow, evolve, move toward love. But we have these incarnatory impulses where we come in and out of lifetimes and we develop missions. Like somebody might be working on how they deal with power, and so one lifetime they may be king, another lifetime they may be a serf. You know what I mean? They're pretty rudimentary examples, but you get my drift.
Yes.
And then we have these we kind of develop these more specific missions as we're coming into a particular lifetime. We develop these incarnatory impulses to choose a family that's going to give us a certain kind of a life, or choose a body that's going to give us a certain experience or something like that. And then of course we during the incarnatory process there's a period where, when you go and watch a movie and you go into the cinema, you've got your bucket of popcorn, you've got your drink, whatever, you sit down, you're aware of all the people around you and all of that, and then at some point you lose your sense of all of that and you become engrossed in the movie.
Yes.
And that's how it operates. It's like you're there and you're remembering your soul purpose, and as you come through the incarnatory channels, as your body's being grown in your mother and all of that, there comes a point where you become engrossed in the magic of three-dimensional reality and you forget. It happens to everyone, to one degree or another. And then what we're left with is that our cells form this body, and in doing so, what it does is they're hard coded, they're hardwired for survival. This body has to survive. We are essentially still, we have the genetic makeup of our whole ancestry. And even in utero, like the fetus goes through a stage where it looks the same as a lizard fetus, and then it develops a bit further, and then it looks the same as a, I think it's like a chicken or something like that. As it's growing, like it goes through these stages, this mammalian stage, and the same thing happens as the layers of our brain are being built. So we have this sort of like genetic imprint of human evolution built into us, and part of human evolution is survival. So what happens is, like when a horse is born in the wild, they're up on their feet within sort of like an hour or so, because that's the survival instinct. They have to be on their feet or they're dead. The predators are going to come.
Yes.
And our survival instinct is to first of all imprint on the mother in an ideal situation.
Mm-hmm. There's
a moment where the gaze meets.
Yes.
And the infant and the mother are flooded with serotonin, and that's a bonding chemical, right? So then that's the bond. That mother's going to keep you safe, and then as you become independent, like not being carried around, but you learn to walk and all that sort of stuff, we develop this incredible awareness of how the world is, right? Where do I fit in it? What do I have to do to survive? Stick close to this one. This one's going to keep me safe. Avoid that one. That one's dangerous. Do you know what I mean? Like we develop all of these, and then we develop strategies. So if it's going to work for us to be independent and outgoing and explore the world around us, then that becomes who we are. We might just as easily, like if we're brought up in a household, for instance, thinking of modern day culture, if we're brought up in a household where the father is exhausted and angry when he gets home from work, we avoid that, right? We don't want to clash with the power. So we find ways to skirt around the power. These are all strategies. Like everyone's different. Everyone comes up with their own story.
Yes, yeah.
But out of that we develop our personalities, and so we forget our mission, so the personality is the ego telling us how the world is and how we need to behave in order to survive. And if that's all we ever pay attention to, the mission is then forgotten.
It's an aborted mission.
It's aborted. I mean, there are aspects of which we cannot avoid the karma that we've set up for ourselves in a lifetime, right?
Yes, yeah, and isn't that where life will sort of
have its way with you?
When we least expect it, it'll just feel like a crack in the jaw, and punch in the nose, or a kick up the bum, or metaphorically speaking.
Yeah,
didn't see it coming. See it coming.
And so this is it. This is being aware of that journey, being aware of how our ego individually for us as individuals, how it hijacks us, how it operates within us, the things that it tells us to do, that sort of thing. It's through awareness of that we can see it in action, see those behaviors in the wild and go, actually, no, I'm just going to choose something different. And circling back to the quote that you gave, it becomes just a daily choice, right? Like every morning, wake up. A really simple exercise is to imagine how you would love to be. Imagine what your soul wants to create. Like imagine that higher self standing in front of you as though it's another person, preferably facing away from you, so you're looking at the back of their head, but you get a sense of who they are in the world, right? Fully expressed, evolved, connected to spirit, connected to your soul. And then physically step forward into that body and just notice what you feel. Notice how your physiology will change to fit that body. And through that physiological change, your psychology will change as well.
Yes, and so what you're just that's what a beautiful description and exercise that you've just shared, and you really listening to you as you describe it, in doing that exercise, you're magnetizing that to you.
Yeah.
And you're stepping into it that way, you're collapsing time almost. You're becoming that now. But there's a few muscles that you've got to build up along the way to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And
Well, it is a choice, and it's an expression of will. You have to will it.
You have to will it. So can you speak to will? Because I think will is, where would we be without our will? And many people understand will insofar as it feels stuck, or how can I'm striving so hard, or I'm working so hard, or I'm willing it to happen, but it's not happening. So again, then, spin the wheel. What's wrong with me? Something's wrong. I'm not worthy, or I'm not capable, or whatever it may be. Yeah. But will force is an incredible power.
Yeah. I think that, look, I am seeing, my wife's a teacher, and she is seeing some interesting shifts in children over the years in terms of will force. Not good shifts either. But I think the most important thing is not so much contemplating whether I have will or don't have will or anything. It was interesting that you mentioned, I'm willing this to happen, but it's just not happening. Because what that says to me is that's not so much about what you're focused on, it's about where you're focused from. And that's really critical. If you're coming from that identity, like if you're circling back to our character from before, if you're coming from that place of I'm not good enough and I have to achieve, it doesn't matter what you're focused on, it's where you're focused from. So that guy could achieve, or that woman could achieve being king of the world, right? Make more money than everyone else, whatever. They're never going to feel complete because of where they're coming from, right? Where they're coming from is a sense of I'm not good enough. So then if you can reorient yourself by, say, doing exercises like I just said, where you are connected, or where you are focused on whatever it is that you want to do, like whatever your heart wants to create, but you're coming from that place where you are whole, where you are complete, where you are perfect, where you don't need fixing, where in fact you can potentially have anything you want in the world. If you're coming from a place where anything is possible and that you are whole and complete, and there's no question of deserving, there's no question of am I good enough, none of that exists in that space. And so that's where you're coming from, and you can see how much easier life is going to be if you come from that place. I often think about my daughter when she was born. She's almost 20 now, but when she was born, she just had this magic about her. And people, we would carry her into shops as a 1, 2, 3-year-old or whatever, and people would just like fawn over her and give her things like, and that went on for years. Like she'd just walk into somewhere and people would just start handing themselves across or handing things across, like you need this lollipop, you need this drink, like you just, and it was just how effortless, how graceful it can be when you are just coming from a place of purity.
And so that's magnetic presence, isn't it? And that's that's what it's all about. Like cultivating that loving, living presence, which is just so, it's like a nucleus that just brings what you love to you, as much as you having to, well, it's working with a different force, I suppose. It's working with your true force, with you, you're plugged into your true power. And
well, you know, have you ever read
your ass to make it happen and not enjoying it when you
yeah it's a great distinction of that David Hawkins made of in his book Power versus Force, and that's the difference. You know, do you force something to happen, or do you operate from your power, where things kind of organically unfold? So it's a good distinction to make.
Yeah. And then the question of what is it that you want? Now, this is an elusive question, or it's difficult for so many people. Like for many people, it's been my experience, it's actually easier for them to describe what they don't want than to really express what they truly want.
Yeah, and I think that's where the ego can hijack things, because it's a pretty volatile area. You know, for all those people that, for instance, were never allowed to have what they want as a child, they're not going to be able to clearly state what they want because they're not allowed to. Yeah. That's just another example of how programming will play out. There's a great exercise, actually. You know, back in the days when when vision boards were a whole big newfangled thing, and everyone had a vision board, and I intuitively got this different way of doing it. So I spent an afternoon pulling up photos on Google of what I thought I wanted, right? And this is going back probably 20 years. We had this spot where we'd sit and have a cup of tea in the morning, and I stuck all these photos on the wall, and as I sat there with them over time, I hung out with what did I energetically feel about that thing, and anything that didn't really have any energy, didn't have any juice for me, off the wall, right? So, you know, super yacht, the sports car, the helicopter, all that stuff out the window really quick. And what I was left with was essentially this really beautiful but simple life. Just hanging out with beloveds and being close to the land, you know, swimming in the ocean, that sort of thing, you know, like quite simple stuff. And so you and I have both done William Whitecloud's work, and if you look at his process for finding what he calls the land of plenty, it kind of unfolds a picture of what it is that your heart wants in this lifetime. You know, what it is that you would love to express in this lifetime, and whatever you get in the land of plenty, I mean, it changes over time. It's like your soul's just drip feeding you the information that you can handle right now. But so I've done some other explorations around soul purpose and things like that, which involve there's a group out there. There was a guy called Michael Newton who developed this process called Life Between Lives, and it's a hypnotic process where he's passed now, but he will slip you into the space between lifetimes where you get to go into the spirit world and connect with your soul group and your soul guides, and really have an assessment of where you are in the flow of your lifetimes and what you're learning and all of that. And those processes have been really interesting for me in terms of seeing that what our heart wants to create in this world and what comes out of like a land of plenty exercise is only part of the picture, and that we have these other missions that are probably most people would consider much more grandiose than living by the beach and swimming every day or something like that. They have these missions of wanting to help more people or help planetary consciousness or whatever it might be. So some of those things are almost, they're too big to comprehend, but if you can just sit with them for a while and just spend the time contemplating what might that look like and what might my role in that be and what can I do today that might forward that. Because to me, like the really important thing is finding what's your purpose, like what are you really called here to do. And in contemplating that, if you type that into Google, how do I find my life purpose? It's just nonsense what you get. Like household names spouting nonsense about making a list of what you're good at or writing a list of the things that you like doing. That's just an opportunity for your ego to hijack you.
Well, I love it. I like drinking coffee and eating chocolate, but if I do that all day, my ego has totally hijacked me from what I'm here to, from my purpose.
Yeah. If only drinking coffee and eating chocolate was your purpose, but apparently not. I think there's more to it than that, Dipika.
I think so. And I love how you describe in your land of plenty. So, for people listening that don't have a concept of what that means, a place where everything you love exists for you already. That you describe it being, it's almost your soul's, you get drop by drop. You're not getting the whole picture. And simply, it's my understanding, we just couldn't hold it. It's so bright and light and pure that could we what would we do? Would we buckle at the knees and and pass out or fry ourselves like?
Yeah, well, and therein lies the shift, like there's so many people in the world who, for instance, seek enlightenment. The amount of people that actually achieve it, very, very few. And so, like you said, that's the pursuit of the human endeavor, I guess, is to operate as much as you possibly can from your highest source of information and go about your business,
and enjoy it.
Enjoy
while you're going about it. It's like, I mean, in the pursuit of enlightenment, if you're not having a good time and not enjoying the gig along the way, what was that all about? What's it for?
Yeah. And look, this is a slight detour, but there are spiritual teachers and practices, I guess, that are essentially designed to get you out of your body, to get you connected to your source. And then there are others that are all about being in your body, and it was the spiritual guru Osho who wrote a book called Roots and Wings, which is essentially finding a balance. That we are deeply spiritual creatures, that we have these layers of consciousness that exist way beyond what we can comprehend in this lifetime, and that they're all in operation right now. Like your absolute highest God source is in operation just as much as the person who doesn't want to get out of bed in the morning because it's all too bloody hard.
Whether you're feeling it or not, it's happening.
It is. So, as much as possible, finding that balance point of, being in the world, eating chocolate and drinking coffee and being totally connected to your source.
Yeah. So you can't elevate unless you're tethered in this human body. That's what I'm hearing you say. Yeah, and what's the point of going out? What's the point of striving to go out to these higher realms when you are on this earth? When you've taken birth, there's meaning to it. There's purpose to it. So it's worth tuning in to what lays 1 inch the other side of the chest bone.
Yeah. And that's the source of your, that's the source of the information. That's the source of, what do I do next? What's the best thing for me to do today? Is to check in with that. Forget the enormous list of things that you've got to do to grow your business or anything like that. It's kind of like, okay, what do I need to do? Ask for help. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. And it can be as simple as that, can't it, Mike? To ask for help. Ask this higher part of you for help. Ask whatever you relate to it. Whatever you relate to, to that big force, that big Maha force.
Yeah. I run a 12-week intuitive business program. And part of that program is really tapping into what your soul wants to create in the world. And then we develop a curriculum based on that and courses and things like that and work through how to put that out in the world. It's incredibly transformative for a lot of people. But the cool thing is that at some point I get them to start thinking about making videos to put on their webpage, and most people freak out. Like, that's when their ego kicks in, right? It's got to be perfect. I've got to look right. I've got to have my makeup done. The lighting's got to be perfect. Like, that's where they go, start thinking about all this thing, and then they script this perfect piece of sales prose to go on there, and then they're reading it and they sound really formulaic because they're reading it instead of just chatting to the camera. And one of the things that I say is, and look, I have been there, early in my career. It was an awful experience.
Yeah.
But over time,
I've been into it. It's stressful. There's a lot of tension in that. A lot of egoic.
Yeah. And what I've learned to do is to just go, okay, set my intention.
Yeah.
What's the outcome I want to achieve here? And then just go, okay, listen. Here's what I want to do. Like, just talk to my higher self. Here's the outcome. Give us a hand. Help me out here. And then press record and go and just talk. And people are amazed at what comes out that they would never have expected to say, but it's right,
Yeah, and I imagine as you teach people in your programs and courses, the more you open that channel of communication by asking and listening. No point asking if you don't listen or you're not willing to do what you're guided to do or say. I don't want to say that. But the more you do that, the more potent it becomes, the more instant and well, then you're really living more intuitively, more in a more congruent relationship with your higher intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, you live on the land, so how does it play out for you in terms of getting up in the morning and looking out your window?
Well, I look out at bush.
Yeah.
And I look out and I go outside, like it's winter at the moment, so I go outside in the morning to get wood to light the fire, and I'm looking up at stars in the sky, and I can hear cicadas and crickets and frogs in the dam and birds, and I can hear traffic too on the Great Ocean Road, and I can hear lots of things, but it's stunning because it's not as I observe that, it doesn't pull me out, it actually quietens me in.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, so it's an easier way to be, and I go to that land when I've been busy, if I've been working on the screen a lot, if I've been out and about in the world doing a lot, the first thing I do on coming home is just walk it, sit in it and be in it, like be in nature, to just sort of put me back together again, to take that quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's beautifully healing being in nature, and even if you live in an apartment building, there'll be parks. Go
There's parks
connect to
everywhere.
that.
Cities have stunning parks, but even if not, there's a sky. There's still a sky, and it may not be as clear, but it's still a sky. Or weeds grow through cracks in pavement.
Yeah,
Nature's still everywhere.
the air is always there to breathe.
Yeah, how generous is that? There's enough for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's that's a lovely little moment that everyone can have. Again, just when you're coming from the right place and you are willing to, just apply a bit of will to go. I'm going for a walk, or I'm going to go and sit outside under the stars before bed for 5 or 10 minutes and just contemplate where I am. I love the whole stargazing thing to me, because it connects to all of those layers that we are, that we are part of, and all of those layers that are part of us that don't necessarily express in this dimension and and in this life, but they absolutely inform us. And the more we hang out with the truth of what is true for us as individuals, and the more authentic we're going to be, and the less masks we're going to have, and the more of a gift to the world that we become, in whatever small way that might be.
Yeah. So, if anybody listening, you taste this purpose and have a sense of what it is, guard it vigilantly, feed it, nurture it, nourish it by doing all the things that that Mike's speaking of. Because what you're talking about, Mike, is it's a beingness. What you're describing in nature is informing us in all these ways that attunes us. Being.
Yeah.
And opulence.
And what?
And our opulence. When the need comes.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. It's just been so great being in conversation with you, and it's so cool that you work with people in this way, that you take these programs and really transform people in this way, so that what they are offering, and especially in entrepreneurship, that they're really solving problems from such a higher or a greater perspective of what is really possible.
Yeah, I tell you, the one final thing that would be really great to tie all this together is going back to our predilection for survival. And when you look at the personality typing things that I talked about, and they all have a shadow side, and the shadow side is essentially, if I don't behave in a certain way, if I don't achieve certain things, if I don't do it the right way, there'll be a problem, right? That'll be bad. But if you boil all of those down, it doesn't matter what personality type it is, whether you're using the 12 or the Enneagram or something like that, you can pare it all down to one thing, and that is the fear of death. That we spend our lives, if we don't make the shift, we will spend our lives behaving in all these inauthentic ways in order to avoid death. Essentially, that's what it boils down to. We might not perceive it that way, but at the absolute root of what's driving us, that is what's driving us, is the fear of death. And something about connecting with those higher parts of ourselves where we really connect with the fact that we are a soul and orient ourselves to come from that place. So rather than thinking about the world as I'm a body, thinking about it as I'm a soul, and what does my soul want to express? The body will drop at some point. The soul will continue. And what that does is it kind of starts to free us from this fear of death. And I do quite a bit of work around that. I'm actually developing something at the moment around releasing the fear of death that just will allow us to be free in the world. And it's incredibly important, I think, to start contemplating, especially this society, we avoid death at all costs, and even talking about death, like you go into a hospital where there's people dying, and no one will tell them the truth. Like, no one will just go, yeah, okay, you're going to die. Make peace with it. They go, oh no, you'll be right. No, you'll get better. Right till the end. You're gonna turn around. It's like, it's just lying to their face. And there's something about operating from the point of view of the soul, which just lets all of that go, and it allows you to just be authentically in the world and really go, okay, this is how I want to express in the world. This is how I want to give myself to the world in service.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm so glad that you're developing this work. I look forward to hearing more about that. But, in the quest for freedom, then what you're describing is a way to really be free and unbound, to live and enjoy and create and love and laugh and do whatever it is that you're here to do, without this ever-present, lingering fear of that moment where the body does drop away.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did promise you also that a gift for your listeners. So
tell us about the gift.
Yeah. So I was trying to help somebody get a sense of their purpose, and particularly in context of being able to differentiate what is purpose versus what is my identity trying to hijack things and make me buy a super yacht or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, in order to be viable.
Yeah.
And so I created this 5-day program where it's like a half an hour video and contemplation and exercise every day for 5 days. And by the end of it, it's like I take you through kind of like a land of plenty exercise, where you really get to not only be able to separate yourself from your identity and really know that you're coming from a place where you are connecting with the right stuff, the pure source, all of that.
Yeah.
And then also just through intuitive writing and that exercise, you actually come away with a really clear picture of what it is that you want to create in the world. And like I said, it's only going to, your soul's only going to drip feed you what you need to know right now.
Yes.
But that's the perfect place to start. There's no point in starting in a week. Like, start with what you need to know now. So yeah, I want to share that with.
Thank you. That's so generous. Thank you. So I'm going to do that, and I encourage everyone listening to this to do it. And so the link for this gift is available where you've linked onto the podcast just underneath. So that's wonderful. Thanks, Mike. It's been so great being in conversation with you.
Yeah, same. Thank you.
Good stuff that I love you come from. I really love you come from, and it's tethered.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you for having me, Dipika. It's been great being on here.
It has, yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful.